It's our institute. I'm only a custodian for 2 years to look after it. There's a lack of respect for demolition contractors. I think we're the forgotten part of the construction industry. We're at the top of our game here. You really need to appreciate what we do. I'm hoping that the membership falls back in love with themselves and demolition, and we can spread the good word to all the people who will listen.
Over the span of more than 35 years as a demolition and construction journalist, I've seen countless trade body presidents come and go. In my experience, those presidents fall loosely into one of three categories. There are those whose presidency kind of goes by without anyone really noticing. There are those that view their chains of office as a key to self-aggrandizement, seem to spend their entire presidency basking in their own glory, often at the expense of their members. But then there's a third category, a tiny and exclusive group who grasp that their role is not to put themselves on a pedestal, rather it is to elevate their membership and their industry. The latest individual to join this very select band is Armac Group's Adrian McLean. McLean became the president of the Institute of Demolition Engineers on Friday the 15th of November in an inauguration that was without fanfare. As you're about to hear, Adrian McLean's presidency is not about him. It's about demolition men and women. Most of all, it's about the members of the IDE. It is actually a week since you were made Institute of Demolition Engineers president. First of all, congratulations. I don't notice any great changes. The industry is no better than it was a week ago. What have you been playing at?
We can't change. Rome wasn't built in a day, but I've been inundated with well-wishing messages from all around the world. It's blown me away. Lads wanting to re-engage with the Institute. Can we advise this and that? We've really hit the ground running. We've got too many speakers for the first time ever for Leeds. We're reaching out to other parts and other industries. And I just feel that there's momentum there now. I've got to make the most of it. I've written a 2+2 year plan, which I'm backwards and forwards with Mark Jack, my vice president. NFDC have invited us down next Friday just to introduce ourselves to at their AGM, although I would be known, and Mark would be most of them. And they've been liaising with Duncan at the NFDC as well. So I think whilst we did part ways a bit from the NFDC, I think there is a lot of common ground there, but we still are the only institute in the whole world for demolition engineers and individuals championing demolition engineer. And I do think that some of the best demolition in the world is done in London, and predominantly because of the cost of land, and the most inventive and invigorating. If you look at what McGee's have done with their recycled facades, you look at McGee's and the hotel at Claridge's tunnelling under and bottom down demolition. Some of the stuff in London is at another level. People are walking along on the busy streets in Oxford Street and that, and lads are up there piecemealing buildings down piece by piece. It's amazing, and going at this every day of the week whilst the city's running 24/7.
You've been a member, a very active member in actual fact, of the IDE for what, 20 odd years now? Why have you chosen now to stand as president?
I was shortlisted many years ago, and a good friend of mine, Richard Dolman, was standing against me. Not against me, we'd both been nominated, and another guy got nominated. So we would have split the Midlands vote. So I said to Rich, you go ahead. And unfortunately, Rich came second, but then the next time he came again. And then with commitments and other things going on and everything else, I came off the council management for a few years, and then I was asked by a lot of people, because I was still doing the regional meetings and I was still getting more phone calls, like I was still on the IDE and that, and I was still helping out as many members with issues, whether it was whatever. So I decided I'd give it one more chance. So I went back on the council management and I got voted back on. So here I am.
One of the things that struck me, I do think I've already felt the change with the IDE. I mean, particularly the choice of the venue, the format for your AGM. I guess it's obvious why you chose to host it in Birmingham, because that's where you are, that's where you're from. But why an Irish bar in particular?
I got strong Irish connections. My father and mum were both born in Cork, and when we went to the Grand Hotel last year, it just didn't work. Despite me going up there and telling them we lost a lot of money, we need bar service, the lads want to have a beer and that. And I think we're pricing ourselves away from our members. Our members are site managers, and we're £150 a ticket to take a day off work, 300, 350, train fares up, then some drinks and everything else. It can be £750, £1,000. Some of our members can't get the day off work because they haven't got anybody else to cover. Some of our members are self-employed, so they lose a day's pay. Some of the lads who work for the directly employed companies, because the companies see the benefits of it, companies like Coleman's and Iris, they actively encourage their site managers and that to become IDE members. We'll let them take it for not as a day's holiday. We'll actually let them claim expenses, let them not take it in the train fare, and not lose a day's holiday. So them lads are slightly better. They're better off. But it's been hard for the self-employed lads with the cost of living. And by the time you get down to London and an event and a hotel and a few beers and everything else, it can be £750 to £1,000. So Birmingham was more affordable. I wanted to make it more attractive to the lads, predominantly lads. And we've all told them at 2026 with 50 years, we're going to go to a nice hotel. But it just had a better feel to it. And it's what I am. It's where I come from. It's my background. It's the demolition lads. One of the best sayings I heard that day, after about 2 pints, one of the old IDE lads goes, "I know this is going to be proper do. I could smell the diesel." And he couldn't smell the diesel literally, but there was lads' arms waving around. There was lads knocking down. There was lads pulling phones out, showing each other pictures of jobs and machines and everything else, and it all day long. And then they had bacon sausage rolls when they arrived, not canapes. That's what we were about. We had black and white pudding going round on the plates. Then we had Irish stew. Then we had all the Guinness, sponsored by a couple of sponsors. And the dude got going. He got a bit of legs. And then I'd even booked food for 5 o'clock, but I didn't know how many people were there. And the guy did 50 pizzas and 50 curry chips. So the lads got a second wind. And at 8 o'clock, there was still quite a lot of lads. I left at 10 o'clock. And there were still 15, 20 lads still knocking things down at the bar. So it worked. Done a full 12-hour shift.
It's interesting you mentioned your father there, because for those people that weren't there, couldn't attend the actual AGM itself, a big theme of your inauguration speech was about your family's journey, as you put it, from Cork to Cambridge. For those that weren't there, give us a quick rundown on that.
Like a lot of Irish men and women, my father left Ireland and he came to England just 16 years of age, and he got off at New Street Station and he walked 3 miles to meet his brother. And it was a time when pubs didn't open closed between Saturday afternoon and Saturday, and a Saturday shift that time was like 3, 4 o'clock, and he told him to wait in the church. Well, he won a scholarship to go to school, and in Ireland they call it the Christian Brothers. It's like grammar school in England, but his parents couldn't afford the books or the schools. He went to school with no shoes when he was in the primary school in the country. They moved into the village town then, and they had wellies for winter, but they just couldn't afford it. So he came to England, and my father's highly intelligent. 3 or 4 years later, after landing in England, got into the groundworks and civils. We had a quarry, and we bumped, like a lot of contractors, we crossed over into demolition. We had a quarry, we had a crusher, we bought some buildings, we knocked them down, we started crushing them, and we morphed into demolition. And that happened, and I mentioned all the companies in the Midlands, the DSMs, the Colemans, McGarry's, King's Heath Demolition, Timmins, John Lynch at Newline, and McGarry's, all strong Irish connections, and the lads in Manchester, O'Connor, Freely's, O'Gara's, Adrian Kelly, all the lads there, the lads down in London, Lowry, Cantillion, McGee's, Scudders, Embassy, and probably the ones I've mentioned, there's as many again I didn't mention. So there's always been a strong connection with the Irish community in groundworks and civils. And after the war, after the bombing war, the Irish rebuilt Britain, but a lot of them demolished what was there as well. And now their sons are engineers and their daughters, and we're demolishing what they built. There's full cycles going full circle again, knocking down motorway bridges that were built, various other structures. And I've actually now, the first time last year, was I've knocked a building down that I've knocked down before. So it's the life cycle of buildings is getting shorter as styles and things change, and there's still a lot of work to do in the UK. Although we've lost a lot of coal-fired power stations, and we're changing from a carbon and moving across to more electric and more stuff, and we're losing a lot of heavy industry. We've still got a massive housing problem to address in this country. There's still a lot of blocks of flats that are fit for purpose. It will be easier to demolish them and rebuild them again.
Just bringing that story full circle, though. Obviously, your son, third generation, is now. You said your father was highly intelligent. There's no flies on Cormac either, is there?
No, he did his university and worked for us, and then he went down and worked with Rob Millard at Dex. Did 2 years in London, temporary works engineers and basements, facades, and the full work. But from Demo Expo years ago when you covered. He was a young lad. There's pictures of him, and he's took a real keen interest in it. He's doing a part-time master's at Cambridge now in engineering. One of the youngest guy ever to get on that course. So the Institute of Civil Engineering. He's the youngest ever full member of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. He's done 2 presentations already for the IDE. So yeah, he's become his own man. He's flown from the family nest. He's got his own little company set up and going. And he's got a great interest in blasting and all types of demolition engineering. He's just been involved 7 weeks up in Scotland on the Liberty demolition job, where that won an award at the DRI, and Robin Rushford was there and Cormac, both IDE members. The lads from MGL were there and they won an award. So like I said earlier, the British demolition engineers are some of the best engineers in the world on innovation. We look at Kikurik with their high-reach excavators and where they took it to. They've always been that step ahead. And it's not much in London now. When you look at some of the jobs that have been done in Scotland and in Newcastle and all the big cities, there's some serious demolition contractors now with professional engineers there, and they're becoming, and clients are demanding it as well, that they want more competent people. They want to demonstrate competency, and as an Institute of Demolition Engineers, we've got a robust exam and entrance system. It's very competent and well recognised within the industry as being thoroughly independent, and you don't get in there on a nod and a wink or somebody.
You've mentioned demolition, no great surprise, because we are talking about the Institute of Demolition Engineers. I get the feeling that demolition is somewhat under threat at the moment from particularly the environmental lobby, who seem to see demolition as the devil incarnate. What's your take on that?
There's a change in the old guard from recycle to reuse and repurpose. So we're looking at a lot of this green steel, carbon reuse and repurposing buildings. But if you take the Marks and Spencers on Oxford Street, they actually proved it was easier to embed carbon and all the rest. It was actually easier to demolish the building, rebuild it, because over 40 years, the actual energy costs to maintain the air conditioning, the heating, and everything else, it was more viable. So our demands on resources are only going to increase as the population increases, and the government really needs to wake up and smell the coffee and start realising that some of these old schools are not fit for purpose. They've got to be demolished. Some of these hospitals not fit for demolish. And it's ironic that the 60s stuff is falling around us, yet the older stuff can be refurbished, because the Victorians built some pretty good buildings, and we seem to have lost our way. And since Nell started looking at things and that, we seem to have lost our way in the 60s and 70s. But I think, and you also got to look at the way the car manufacturers do things with the end-of-life directive as well. We've got new composite panels now and spray-on foam concrete, so we can't recycle, and we're bringing out legislation, and yet we don't have the capacity in our recycling plants or anything else to reuse these products. And that's what it is now. It's not recycle, it's reuse is the new buzzword with all these people. But they're not asking the people who've got to actually physically do the work and actually make it happen. That's sadly lacking. We're getting told to by dictated to people who've never done a day's work.
I think that's one of the areas where the Institute of Demolition Engineers, it's an institute, but it's demolition engineers. We're not just talking about sort of hairy-ass demolition men. We're talking about actually qualified, academically qualified. Those are the people that government and legislators should be speaking to, surely.
You're quite correct. And the demographic in the demolition engineers is changing. We had a lot of lads who came, there's no entry level into demolition. Anybody can be a demolition engineer. There's no discrimination, and lads have worked bottom up. But we're seeing a lot of young lads, not enough girls, sadly, coming in sideways. The industry have done degrees in construction and other similar things. And some have come from the waste side of things, some have come from the asbestos side of things. And they're enjoying demolition because the challenge, and it's not the same old, and it's interesting, and we do get quite a good buzz on it. And you're quite right. They're not, when you look at all the knowledge that we've got and all the experts, no one actually consults this typical government. They find somebody who can, but they don't actually go to coalface and speak to the miners who are actually doing the work, and how's this physically going to work, and how are we going to get this and make this happen. Keir Starmer wants to build 300,000 houses a year. We haven't got enough bricklayers. No one said to him, have a look at the CSCS. And I don't agree with the grandfather rights. The lads should have just been allowed to pass out their time. The new lads sound, but the old lads should have just been able to feather out. And we're getting 30%. Only the latest figures for the apprentices, only a third are finishing their apprentices. And we're getting, I think, 50, 70,000 lads, cards expiring every year. Although the workforce is aging, we're only getting about 20,000 joining. So two things are going to happen. Either wage rates are going to massively increase, or we're going to get nowhere near 300,000 hours a year. It's going to be more like 200. And yes, we've got to look at inner cities and redeveloping and brownfield sites. But the government, there just isn't the capacity there to build these houses. It's just blue-eyed thinking. It's not there to happen.
I want to go back very quickly to your father, basically, because obviously he travelled over the sea to England to do what he did. One of the key tenets of your speech is the fact that the IDE is going the other way. I know the IDE has been talking about this for a long time, but you are actually launching overseas membership of the IDE. How is that going to work?
We've been talking for a long time, and the international membership, we've got a route now, because it wasn't fair. We're predominantly looking at Commonwealth countries because English language is the business language of the world. So we first of all said it's got to be in English. And so we couldn't come up with a route that why should they learn all our legislation? The legislation in Italy, France, Australia. Australia's got 4 different regions there: New Zealand, Canada, America. It's all different. So we finally found, through Stephen McCann at Preece, he's developed an online modular training scheme so people can do that course. And once they've done that, then they have a formal interview. They send us a portfolio of what they're doing, and they become an international member of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. There's a couple of things going on as well that in the background. When I was speaking to an ex-member of the IDE in New Zealand, Chris Doyle, and we're trying to make him one of the first international members because he was a qualified member, by straight to the professional interview. And that stage, he's then trying to get us into the New Zealand Demolition Authority that we can then affiliate with them. So we're going to try the Aussies first, the New Zealanders, and then obviously the Republic of Ireland and all the ex-Commonwealth countries that the NFDC are already talking to. They look to our guidance on high reach and all the other guidance notes that the NFDC have been producing, which a lot of it has been written by IDE members and have been contributed massively to that. So we've had inquiries from Qatar, New Zealand, Australia. So we've had about 40 inquiries, nothing solid yet. There is costs involved, and people are mindful of money, but we want to become more professional and open the engineering to the world.
I've got to be honest, I've literally 2 days ago I finished, I think this is my 4th year as a judge for the New Zealand Demolition and Asbestos Association. I judge their awards, as I say, for the past 4 years. The quality of some of the work they're doing in New Zealand, companies like Ward and Henderson and McMahon, they are the real deal. They are every bit as good as we are over here. I think they would make fantastic additional members to the IDE.
Yeah, and the connections are there there's a lot of expats gone out there, or look, somewhere along the line their granddad or their father was English, Scottish, predominantly, or Welsh. I know there's a strong Maori population there, but it's an easy win for us to get members from there and share knowledge. You have to remember, after the Christchurch incident, Coleman's Big High Reach went out there. Some of the Coleman machine drivers and engineers went to help them out there in their time of need. But so they call on our expertise, but they have strong, like you said, expertise now. And demolition is becoming more and more exportable. C&D have been in Qatar, use and salvage. I've just been to Saudi Arabia and Portugal. There's lads sticking diggers now on boats, not attachments, not men on flying out to the job. They're actually bringing their gear to these countries and bringing it back. It's amazing, something that I don't think anyone would have considered 20 years ago. Brown & Mason have opened an office in the Netherlands. So you can see how the whole demographic, I think Despair are coming over to do their top-down method in the UK. So the whole world for demolition has opened up. I think where SafeDem has just blasted some towers at NASA in America. Who thought that a UK-based blaster would be blasting in the home of, we're waiting for John Wayne and Red Adair, who thought a Scottish man would be blasting for in America. It would have been unheard of 20 years ago. So
starting last week, you've got 2 years in the hot seat, which probably seems like an eternity now, but which will go by in an instant. I'm sure John Woodward and Terry Cornby have already told you that. What are you actually hoping to achieve during your presidency?
It's our institute. I'm only a custodian for 2 years to look after it. I want to pass it on to the next Mark coming after me, but me and Mark are sitting down on the 5th of December and we're actually putting a 4-year plan together. So I'm looking to get the membership from just over 400 to 500. I've already had several affiliates want to come back and join us. They just enjoy being around the demolition engineers. As I said, smelling the diesel, it was changing for them. And I'm trying to make it more appealing for people. Then we've got looking at the international membership. I'm doing that. I've got a strong lineup of speakers because of my contacts for Leeds. I've got more speakers than I need. I'm setting up inside the IDE small committees. I've got an Ministry of Education, which is Stephen and Richard, to reopen with Wolverhampton and get that going, get the foundation degree getting going. Mike and Howard are going to start looking at the seminars, and once a month, a bit like Anne Dunn, doing the webinars in the evening when lads get home from work to discuss all demolition and eventually open them up to the overseas lads. We're moving along. Can't do it all at once, but we're getting there. And we're looking at doing a golf day next year. I know golf's not everybody's thing, but we're giving people opportunities to meet up. We've got the Northwest region already in line with Blue Machinery, kindly sponsored, and Mike's beavering away already getting speakers. I've already got 4 or 5 speakers for the One Great George Street in September. That's been disappointing the last few years. We've had to go from the big room to small room 100. And I hope to get that back. I'm also analysing in between now and Christmas. We've got 400 members, but I feel like it's become a 100 club for the last 3 years. We have 3 events a year, 2 seminars, 1 AGM. I want to analyse the 100 people who turn up to most things. And I think it's fair to ask the members to go to 1 event a year out of the 3, and they should do. And I'll be writing to the ones who haven't been to anything in the last 3 years. It's the reason why, trying to find out. I know some of them are up in the top end of Scotland, but we're also we're joining up with the NFTC from last year in the IG to do our 3 road shows. We're going to do 1 in Scotland, which Steve McCann's organising it. And instead of just being the morning, we're going to roll it out a full day. Myself and John are going to pop over to Northern Ireland and tie up with Eamon McCormack, who's been a great supporter of the IDE in Belfast. And then we're trying to nip down to Dublin and see if we can get we had 3 lads over, the O'Kelly brothers, O'Kelly Demolition. There's a bit of appetite in Ireland for it as well. So we're trying to move things on. And this AGM has made a profit, not a big profit, but we're in profit. So it's going forward. There's Maureen left, to 2 girls in the office now. We're just hoping to get back to our roots again and get the feel back in the industry and the love for the IDE. But I do feel since COVID anyway that people aren't going to functions as much and meeting as much. They've lost that meeting up for a pint and the social action things. I think it's changed the way we have Zoom meetings now, and this is on Zoom. It's changed, and the way we get social media now off LinkedIn, X or Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, things now. Lads would go there to get knowledge, see who moved here, who was doing that job, but now there's so much out there on social media, it's easily gotten, whereas before you had to go to these events to find who and what was happening.
Can you actually make any significant changes? Obviously, the relocation to Birmingham, the fact that it was in a bar rather than a swanky hotel, I think you've made your mark there. But you've got a council of management, plus you've got a membership as well. Could you revolutionise the IDE, or do you still have administrative hoops to jump through?
Yeah, we're still not discussing with everything with the council. It's not a dictatorship, and if there's anything radical, it has to go to the AGM to the vote. We have to follow our rules. I'd like to develop our education side more, because I do think that where the NFDC stop, I think there's room for our foundation to degree. I'd like to see that go out to principal designers and CDM lads, because they take this role on without understanding demolition. We're getting dictated to a lot of time by clients and other people who don't really understand demolition. You put a Section 8 receipt and they want a full copy of the method statement. Well, is there anyone competent there that really can understand and read the method statement? I feel disappointed as well with councils not closing roads. I mean, I always say to them, we close the M1, sir. We close the M25. I close the M6. Why can't we close your side street, mat out, and come from the front with high reach excavators without the need for scaffolding? Does not work around high reach excavators very well. We've seen numerous cases you reported and where it's not the right way to do the job. London's predominantly scaffold, tube, floor by floor demolition, but we moved that out to the suburbs, and it's led to we've had some lucky escapes on that, and it is worrying, the methodologies done. But I'm also been speaking to Jan at the HSE, and now him being an honorary member, we're talking to somebody else now about doing the same. We're trying to reach out to other industry bodies and say, look, come and have a look at Leeds. I want to invite senior guys in Balfour Beatties and other main contractors, see how good we are. This is where we're at. We're at the cusp here. We're at the top of our game here. You really need to appreciate what we do. There's a lack of respect for demolition contractors in the country. They don't buy main contractors and developers. They just see us as a stepping stone to get the piling mat down, to get building, to get the office block, the hotel, the apartments ready and built. They don't engage with us enough early enough to find out all the pitfalls. The amount of jobs I still go to, we have to cut and carve around live gas substations, electricity substations, because no one spent the time to work out how we're going to cut it out and disconnect it. Is still worrying. It's still a problem in the industry. It's like asbestos surveys. It's a legal requirement to have a demolition and refurbishment survey, and there's still clients asking you to take it all risk, which should not be allowed. And I'd like to see the HSE prosecute some clients, not out of malice, but out of you should have known better, or actually take a CDM, principal planner, to task over this. You haven't demonstrated enough competency here. You didn't go through the hoops and checking that this company could do this. A lot of companies have outstretched themselves and have got on to jobs that they didn't have the real technical competency for. There's not enough vetting going on. I know a lot of companies now are starting to use companies like C&D and Richard Van, and there is a more thorough vetting of demolition contractors to get onto lists. But there still are some lists that the bloke from the corner shop knows the bloke because he gets his paper from there and he's on the list for the demolition.
This video or this audio is going to be watched or listened to by demolition folk around the world, the vast majority of whom aren't actually in the IDE. So tell them, why should they consider joining? Now that you have overseas membership as well, why should they consider joining?
For me, I did an ONC and HNC at college, and I didn't really have any formal qualifications in demolition. And when I spoke to John about it, and we would go to see clients and that, and your clients are dictating, and actually say I'm a qualified demolition engineer, and you've got the letters after your name, it gives it a lot of credibility in our industry in the UK, and respectability. The HSE will often tell you that demolition supervisors are the best of any of the supervisors they meet on any of the industries, and that's because they have knowledge of health and safety, working at heights, they understand asbestos, they have to understand waste regulations, the amount of exposure, you have to understand about scaffolding, working at heights, manual handling, and